Carl got to the station at 5:30 in the morning, the same as every Monday. He checked the playlist, sorted the mail, poured the coffee. There was an envelope from Motown in the pile, a single, promo copy, standard. He looked at the label. He had not heard of this one. He put it in the stack with the other promos and worked through the first hour of the show. At 7:15, between a commercial break and the news, he had 3 minutes to fill. He picked up the single, "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye. He dropped the needle. He had been doing morning radio in Detroit for 10 years. He had played hundreds of Motown singles. He knew the format, knew the catalog, knew what a Motown record sounded like and what it was supposed to do in the first 30 seconds. This one did not do any of those things in the first 30 seconds. It did something else entirely. Carl Mitchell had come to Detroit from Georgia in 1958, following an uncle who had work at Ford. He had started in radio as a technical operator, setting levels, managing the board, before working his way into a hosting position. He was 38 years old and had developed, over 10 years of morning shifts, a precise sense of what an audience wanted at 7 in the morning. Familiar, energetic, not demanding. You did not put something complicated on at 7 in the morning. You gave people what they came to the radio for. What came out of the speakers at 7:15 on that Monday morning in January 1971 was not what Carl expected to come out. There was the sound of voices first, people talking, the background texture of a gathering, and then Marvin Gaye's voice arriving without announcement, not starting a song so much as joining a conversation that was already underway. "What's going on?" The voice was gentle. It was asking rather than announcing. It was doing something that a 7:15 radio single was not supposed to do, which was to require the listener's full attention. The phone started before the song was finished, not the volume of calls that a request line gets when a listener wants to dedicate something, the volume that happens when a room full of people all reach for the same thing at the same time. Carl counted 8 lines lit up when he came out of the song into the news break. He played it again after the news. The lines stayed lit. He played it a third time at 8:30, which broke every format rule he had been working within for 10 years. The calls were consistent. "What was that? Who was that? When can we buy that? Play it again." He called the station manager from the booth. He said, "This is the most response I have ever gotten to a single play." The manager came in, listened to the phones, and told Carl to keep playing it as long as the lines were lit. Carl played it 4 more times before noon. The lines were still lit when he went off shift at 1. What Carl understood, standing in that booth on a Monday morning in January 1971, was not anything complex. He understood that he had put something on the radio that the audience had been waiting for without knowing they were waiting for it. That the specific quality of the record, the gentleness of it, the way it talked about something real without raising its voice, had landed in those listeners at 7 in the morning in a way that the format had never been designed to accommodate, and that the audience had responded to as if they had been thirsty for exactly this. Gordy had released the single reluctantly, under pressure from Marvin and from internal Motown advocates who believed in it. He had not expected this. When the sales numbers came in over the following weeks, when it became clear that What's Going On was selling faster than anything Motown had put out in years, the explanation for why it was selling could be traced in part to mornings like the one Carl Mitchell had in his booth. Not just Detroit. Stations across the country were doing variations of the same thing, pulling the record out of rotation rules, playing it more than format allowed, responding to the evidence of their own phone lines. Radio had gotten there before the trade press, before the critical establishment, before any of the apparatus that usually determines what a significant record is. Radio had just played it, and the audience had known. Carl finished his shift at 1 o'clock and drove home through Detroit on a January afternoon. He thought about the morning. He thought about 8 lines lit up before the song had finished. He thought about what it meant when an audience reached for something that fast, with that consistency. He had been doing morning radio for 10 years. He had never seen anything like it. He would not see anything like it again. The single spent 3 weeks at #1 on the R&B chart. The album that followed became one of the most important records in the history of American music. Carl Mitchell had played it for the first time at 7:15 on a Monday morning in January 1971, between a commercial break and the news, because he had 3 minutes to fill and a promo copy from Motown in his pile. He kept the promo copy. He never threw it away. Some mornings leave a mark on a person, and that was one of them.